Welcome everybody to session 4, giving insights to built environment education in different institutional settings. And built environment education happens in very different contexts, and when we say settings, we basically mean places, spaces and institutions that influence, of course, how built environment education is taught. In different settings, stakeholders and educators have diverse motivations. They use a variety of tools and methods and approaches to teaching built environment education. And we differ formal educational settings that have a curriculum, for example, like schools and universities, and then we have the rather non-formal settings of children clubs, architecture association, but also simply activities happening in streets and parks. And with this session, we want to give you an overview on different built environment education providers. We will name a few examples, but in the end, they can be roughly categorized in 7 groups. We have out-of-school clubs, children clubs, primary and secondary schools. We have universities, architecture and environmental centers. We have professional bodies and networks and NGOs and the private sector.
Exactly, and as you know, museums are one of the largest B providers. In this group, we have numerous examples. They are children's museum, city or local history museum, architecture museums, or sometimes even, as you know, technology museums have a wide range of B relevant educational activities for children and young people as well. They appear sometimes as in-school or extracurricular content. Children's museums, they usually have very different interactive exhibitions and they revolve around a myriad of topics. Sometimes it is water, it is energy, city, or local community themes. Independently, with families or museums guides, children can explore and learn about the topics in a playful and hands-on way. So, for example, we have mini-city exhibitions such as Kids Town in Kids Plaza Museum in Japan. We have Kidopolis in Houston Children's Museum, and actually in these museums you can find exhibitions that have small replicas of banks, post offices, different kind of city squares, and they enable children to see the difference between rural and urban areas. They can then investigate the sights, sounds, textures, and sometimes even smells of a city. In other words, these exhibitions simulate how real world works, and they present par excellence opportunities for pretend play. On the other hand, we have architecture and city museums, and B activities there are developed around museums' permanent collection. This is the case in Argdes. They have exhibition on history of Swedish architecture. Or, on the other hand, they are offered in conjunction with exhibitions, and this is the case in Vienna Architecture Museum. Frequently, museum pedagogy is based on learning through play and also family learning concepts, and different kind of educational activities are then developed together with foundations, schools, networks, association, or sometimes even freelance architects and artists. And I would give to you, because now this is where we'll be speaking about the settings where we work, colleges and universities.
Thank you very much. We know that universities offer a variety of built environment education, both for children and young people, but also for university students. It combines with art and STEAM education, and children have the exposure to architecture and urban planning education, but also to arts and science. And to university students, built environment education provides often a community engagement and a teacher's training opportunity. Yet long-running and established programs are still rare.
Today, yes.
And they are usually single lecturers, initiatives who runs related courses independently. One example is Bauhaus University in Weimar, Germany, that has offered already since 2001 an established program both to architecture students and to future art teachers to educate them together. The University of New Mexico, for example, offers an architecture and design course for children to undergraduate architecture students. And also several public and private universities, like in Costa Rica, are trying to establish a joint program. So you see, programs are still developing. Nevertheless, universities across continents provide school children with a range of programs, also to explore their future careers, for example, in architecture and urban planning. Seoul University holds an annual one-day workshop summer architecture school that gives high school students an overview of what architecture education and the profession is all about. And we find comparable programs, for example, in the US, which provide, again, rather high school students an intensive architecture studio experience. So university-driven built environment education can be distinguished from other B programs in a way that it both serves university students and school-aged children. In many occasions, university students learn by doing, acting as educators themselves. For example, the community participation class that is taught at Misr International University in Egypt, that offers university students a hands-on experience in working with children in underprivileged communities.
And as you know, we will be now speaking again about out-of-school clubs, because they're also one of the great providers. So architecture and art clubs have extensive BE offer. They can be private initiatives like building, as you know, in Austria, or they are the ones following national programs for extracurricular architecture activities, like it is the case in Arki in Finland. So out-of-school children's club offers BE workshops, programs and projects for kindergartens, but also for different schools, primary and secondary one. And they target children from the age of 4 to the age of 20. Besides, they also organize summer and winter camps, different kind of team building and recreational events. In clubs, children are introduced to the elements of architecture. Some of them are light, shadow, colors, shapes, materials, structures, proportions. And through these workshops, such as Let's Examine by Arhitecturicol in Estonia, children can learn about different types of buildings, schools, skyscrapers, or houses. Similarly, Arki has developed a project that's called Future School Designing with Children, and there they developed innovative school space typologies with children. So while some clubs offer specific topics on architecture and design, alongside with societal questions such as participation or environment or technology, the others, like EDAS, coming from Moscow, they aim to stimulate children to spin the world in another direction, if I use the words of the founder, Vladislav Kirpichev, and they work with very, very abstract concepts and model-making tools. In order to illustrate this, for example, they ask children to model in order to answer the question, what's behind Kazimir Malevich's Black Square? Now we can be speaking also about city and city planning and children's perception actually of the city. This is another huge topic in clubs. So we have, for example, Arki, See My City, as well as A School Minsk I. These are both interactive online platforms that host virtual and interactive maps where children can explore and showcase their cities. They can also imagine different futures through digital storytelling, and they can upload stories, pictures, different kind of audio and video materials, which are actually recordings of their cities, Helsinki in this case, and Minsk. The aim of clubs is, as you, Angela, know, definitely not to build future architects. However, what they would like to do is to encourage creative development, design thinking, and stimulate different forms of children's expression. And I will give to you, because you're the founder of YAS, and you can speak about the non-profit sector.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the non-profit sector, but also private organizations are by far the most diverse group of educators. Here we have experts from very different fields of architecture, urban planning, but also artists that work together in NGOs and private organizations. And yes, Jugendarchitektur Stadt is a non-profit organization I'm part of, and is an example beyond others. I know networks like Architektur Spielraum Kärnten or B-Lab in Singapore. You met Albert Liang already in session 3. That is a social enterprise, while others like the Spanish team of Maus House started as a private architectural firm, and it became now a non-profit organization. So key activities include project-based workshops that can be also fee-based, participatory design workshops for local governments and municipalities as clients, or summer camps. And one prominent example is the hip hop architecture camp in the US. So very diverse activities. Yes. And NGOs and private initiatives do also project work in schools. They do workshops and after-school programs for schools and daycares. They do training courses for teachers. So here you see already an overlapping with some of the contexts and settings we have been describing before. And in many countries worldwide, you can find open access material developed by non-profit and private organizations for teachers, but also for others to be working with children and parents. And even an own journal is existing for schools and families on architecture called AMAC. It was founded with Maus House and Osa Menor Jocheraedo, you will meet also within this MOOC and get introduced to. B programs by private and public institutions are largely depending still on a lot of voluntary work and also external funding. And what you can see is that these stakeholders are very well connected with the local, national, and also with the international professional institutions, and exchanging informations on built environment education to broaden their reach and also to develop new methodologies.
Schools are important carriers of BE activities, and BE is sometimes a part of the curriculum. In schools, of course, depending on the educational curriculum of the state or a country, architecture, city planning, design, and environment is part of different curricular subjects. Architecture is often a part of our curriculum, but what we need to say is that, unfortunately, these subjects usually discuss only architectural styles. Matters that are related to BE and typical work methods that are practiced in building projects, such as model making, for example, are addressed in subjects like mathematics or sciences, also social studies, history, politics, economics, or handcrafts. We need to stress that the process of planning, designing, and also constructing and building as a creative but also political process is hardly ever discussed explicitly by teachers in schools. However, we have one good example that's doing exactly this. In this school, pupils are invited to be in charge of first proposing, then designing and building in and around their school spaces. And these are all efforts of their art teacher that's called Körner Wilsdorf in Holbein High School in Germany. He holds, as an art teacher, architectural seminar where his pupils so far rebuilt many school places, including Media Garden, which transformed actually 2 storage rooms into 1 library today. Although there are many schools and they created many textbooks and open access teaching materials, what we don't know so far, and we don't have any relevant research to what extent teachers exactly in schools are using these materials. However, what we know is that teachers willingly use programs that are offered by universities, sometimes even museums or professional associations, like the program that's called Architects in Schools, and probably today one of the most famous one is done by American Union of Architects.
These designated houses of architecture or environment have been established as places of communication and exchange between architects, planners, and the society. And they also provide architects and planners community predominantly in the cities and regions. And Arc en Rêve from Bordeaux in France is maybe one example to name beyond many others. although they include built environment education programs for children and young people, these do not have that as a primary focus. The bee activities are coordinated with associations of School of Architectures, for example, but also environmental centers, which can be found in rural areas. They offer also regular opportunities for young people to learn about aspects related to built environment. This includes exhibitions, workshops on sustainability, on resource recycling, conservation, climate change, building with local materials, or gardening. Lastu, a School of Architecture and Environmental Culture from Finland, is a very good example for that.
Chambers and associations also offer bee activities. National unions of architects and planners, as well as other professional associations, for example, in the construction industry, provide bee for children. Yet their motivation is to promote these professions. Most prominent is a long-standing program of architects in schools. Today offered worldwide, but many different chambers, like the one in Romania. However, the most well-known one is the one by American Institute of Architects. Here, committed architects and planners offer programs in schools, and they also host competitions on different architectural themes and topics. They support the development of teaching materials, and something that's really important, they offer further education to architects, planners, and teachers in the field of BE. An excellent overview of activities by national union can be found on UIA network of Built Environment Education. This network today brings together not only delegates from national unions of architects and planners worldwide, but also they have BE activities from people that come with very diverse professional backgrounds. Besides in person, they organize many different online meetings, webinars as well, and they would like to promote knowledge exchange on BE practice. An important format is definitely Golden Cube Award. And we today encourage you to get familiar with these activities and the most important BE policy documents that are developed by UIA. One of them is UNESCO UIA Charter on BE from 2019, as well as BE Guidelines, their specific second edition that came out in 2008. And Angela, would you like to join me now so that we sum up our session 4?
Yes, thank you very much. To have a conclusion in the end and also summary, one has to say that many of the specific stakeholders we named and activities illustrate that it has been difficult to differentiate between these different providers of built environment education. There are close connections, alliances, partnerships, or other content-related stuff and organizational networks and interconnections. And on the one hand, several initiatives mentioned deal with built environment education issues, but are not considered as main built environment education providers, and such as environmental centers, for example, exactly, or other museums that have interactive exhibitions that do not underline education as one of their main goals, but nevertheless they educate about the built environment. We also have very many individual working people that campaign for built environment education actively. They contribute to shaping this field. And city building and planning or Baukultur departments, as well as also local initiatives for built environment education, among others, are significantly contributing on the very much base of local municipalities. Media like journals, books, computer games, but also board games, TV, documentaries and programs could we also see as built environment providers.
Exactly, and as you know, although the educational programs appear sometimes similar, they have similar or same working methods, teaching formats, sometimes they employ similar methodology, work on similar topics. Built environment education, institution and educators have very different impact in this setting. So firstly, we need to say the different mandates, different mindsets, different motivations and concepts, they definitely impact on the way institutions offer BE programs and also who teaches BE in these settings. Secondly, we have to say that the locations like classrooms, art studio, clubs, museums, the time, is it a school time, is it a free time? And the various professionals in these different settings take the role of teachers. They are architects, they are urbanists, they are sometimes artists. All of this holds sway and influence, as you well know. Despite these seemingly similar teaching formats or aims, different institutions today, as well as their mutual collaboration through BE activities, create very different teaching and learning experiences for children that take part.
And last but not least, one has to stress that ourselves, in the role of educators, we're also taking on different roles. Working as university teachers, doing BE, being part of nonprofit organization, collaborating with many, many partners in schools, with teachers and so on. So you see, these overlappings in institutional settings are also happening in people. And I think that makes this field also very interesting. Well, some of you may have wondered already, where in the world are we? What is this place where we do the taping of this MOOC session? Marta, can you reveal where we're at?
Yes, of course. Today we are in one coffee shop and in its playground with the city team in the middle of Belgrade.
And of course, we also want you to think about how these everyday spaces and places where where people are, where they get together, provide a setting of teaching BE. And of course, you can find probably some cons for this place, this very commercial place to use for BE activities, but also some pros for reaching out to teach about the built environment.